how can you tell if the monk or your teacher or a teacher knows what they are talking about? What's the standard that one should follow?
Well, the first thing to recognize is that you don't have the fully accurate standard, because if you did, you wouldn't need a teacher. So the second standard then is to be honest with yourself, to see whether you are choosing or considering following a certain teacher because you're really kind of understanding, or at least it's making you think and making you want to understand what he's teaching, or because you're inspired by his demeanor, by the energy or aura or whatever you might think you might be perceiving. Is it just uplifting you in sense of inspiration, so emotionally pleasing to hear that? Or is it because it really intrigues you and, even scares you in a way and outlines something that you recognize as work to be done? So if you check why you're inclined towards this teacher, that teacher, if you clarify this, then the next step would be, okay, so these things that are being taught, if I'm understanding them correctly, if I were to understand them fully to the extent they're being taught, would that result in dispassion, disenchantment, sense restraint naturally, or does it bring passion to increase, and so on? And then if it's increasing passion, for example, is it because I'm misunderstanding it? Or is it because, no, I fully understood and the teacher confirms that's exactly what he teaches, and yet I'm not free from passion? So your goal individually, for every individual themselves, should be free from passion, aversion, and delusion, indolence, free from craving. So you follow the teaching for that goal. You don't forget that that's the goal. The goal is not inspiration. The goal is not to be like that teacher or this teacher. The goal is to be free from passion and craving for yourself. And that's the standard you should use.
Is gratitude and appreciation for life the result of contemplating death correctly, or understanding death correctly?
It depends what you mean by appreciation for life. Whether you mean being content with little, then yes. If you mean valuing sensuality more, no. It means you're not practicing mindfulness of death correctly. So if your appreciation of life is expressed through valuing things through your senses more, and being more enamored with them, so to speak, giving them more value because everything will come to pass, so it's much more important, much more special, then you're not really practicing mindfulness of death correctly. Because if you do it correctly, it will result in dispassion. That means that even physical discomfort and sense deprivation you will be content with, because you have no passion towards either. You have no passion towards prolonging pleasure, and you have no passion towards trying to get rid of the pain.
Will you enjoy the present moment more?
Define enjoyment. Like, enjoyment mean not being bothered by it, or enjoyment mean enjoying that which comes through the present moment, which is inevitably going to be on the level of the senses. So either way, if you're enjoying your senses and sense objects more as a result of your sense restraint and your practice of mindfulness of death, means you're not doing it sufficiently, let's say like that. If you do it sufficiently, dispassion will arise. Concern, peril will become visible in even a momentary enjoyment of senses. Because it's incompatible with death, and with the image of death, and with mindfulness of death. So the only time you can appreciate senses more on account of practicing mindfulness of death is lapsing from mindfulness of death, which is why you appreciate the senses more. But in your mind you still think you're established in the perception of mindfulness of death. But that's not the case, because passion has arisen in your experience. So what you have is the idea of the practice of mindfulness of death, but that idea is not the actuality.